And our first speaker this morning is our Executive Director, Julie Thorstensen. So Julie, I'm going to let you go ahead and introduce yourself and do your presentation, because I know you have a lot of information to cover, and you know, give the members of the Southwest region an update on a lot of the work that you've been working on. So Julie.
Thank you. Hihani washte, Julie Thorstensen, Imachiapi, Woksapi ki Gluhamni Wia Lakota Machiapi. Good morning, I'm Julie Thorstensen. My Lakota name is She Carries Her Wisdom With Her. I am the current Executive Director for the Native American Fish and Wildlife Society and have been in this position since May of 2019. And actually, my first kind of order of business when I got hired was attending the national conference at Gila River, and it was really great to see everyone. And then of course COVID hit, so that's been kind of disappointing that we've had to do a lot of our work in kind of this virtual world. But I just want to thank you for joining today, and thanks Alvita and Darren for the intro and the good words, and especially the prayers up this morning, Alvita. It's a tough time for everybody, and I think we all kind of thought we were out of the woods, and now we've got different challenges, but just pray for everyone to stay healthy and safe. With that, I'm going to share my screen and do a presentation on the national office. Everyone see that? Okay, so just a little bit, kind of going to do highlights from, or actually a report from the past 2 years since we missed out last year. Highlights from 2020 was that we increased our staff. When I started in May of 2019, there were 1.5 full-time staff, and then I joined, and then we worked on increasing our staff, so we're up to 6 full-time employees and 1 contractor. Also increased organizational structure. We saw increases in funding, visibility, partnerships, and then virtual world adaptation. Highlights so far for our 2021 year, again, increase in funding. We've got some training opportunities, a new website, advocacy for tribes. We're doing a lot more outreach to tribes, and also an increase in technical assistance requests. And most recently, our national summer youth practicum, which this picture is from, that was a lot of fun. We did that a couple weeks ago, and I'm sure Ashley will talk more about that. So one of the things that I noticed when I started in 2019 was just that we were missing a lot of our organizational structure. And so I focused a lot on that, and actually having the downtime that we had, the unwanted kind of downtime that we had, actually gave me an opportunity to focus on our organizational structure. So, we got workman's comp and general liability insurance, which we didn't have. And then we worked really hard on policies in 2019 and 2020. And we were able to approve telework policy, update our conflict of interest. We updated and combined regional policy, also came up with a participant code of conduct. We brought Robert on in May of 2020, and he worked with the CLEOs to update our practical pistol competition manual. And then most recently, we finalized a financial management manual and scholarship policy. For our staff, we implemented an employee performance evaluation program with mid-year and annual reviews, developed a new employee orientation checklist. We were able to increase our health benefits by adding vision and dental. And then in August, this picture is actually from August of 2020, we did a staff retreat to Estes Park for the YMCA of Rockies, which is where we had our summer youth practicum this year. And we did this insight discovery personality activity that assigned us each a color and kind of actually helped us to identify how we can communicate. So this is a picture of staff, myself on the left, Corey Lucero, fish and wildlife biologist, Ashley Carlisle, our education coordinator, Sean Cross in the back there, another fish and wildlife biologist, Heidi McCann, our office manager, membership coordinator, and then of course, Karen Lynch, now retired public information officer. Also, one of the things that we were able to take advantage of during the pandemic was professional development, and the Fish and Wildlife Service has an excellent course on Alaska Native relations. And since none of us are Alaska Natives, you know, we took this time to really take advantage of those online courses, and they're really in depth, and we gained a lot of knowledge of kind of trying to understand our Alaska Native membership and region. One of the objectives outlined in our strategic plan was to control the financial situation and increase our funding. So in 2020, we saw an increase in funding of about $460,000. We also saw membership revenue increase, a 10 times increase, because membership hadn't been being collected for a while. And we were able to secure a BAS program for $10,000 to help with our national conference. In 2021, we're still seeing increase in funding, this time almost $890,000. This includes a Southwest Wildlife Water Assessment Project that we just released the RFP for on Friday, so please get that out to all of your contacts. We are continuing to see membership revenue as people start you know, getting into the habit again of paying a membership, and through the work that Heidi's done of outreach, and we're at 10,900 at the end of July. And we were able to secure another grant for $10,000 to help with the textbook project, which I'll talk about more. And then some of the just kind of the overarching financial successes that we did is we just completed our 2020 audit with no findings. So that was exciting for us, and that should be available soon. And then one of the major obstacles we had was just being able to access all the regional accounts. And we were concerned about that for audit reasons. And we now have access to all of our regional accounts. So that was actually a kind of a big accomplishment for us. As far as visibility, I pretty much took the pandemic virtual world and decided that I would say no to no person or no request, and started doing as many virtual presentations as possible. In 2020, I presented to over 1,000 participants, and some of the things that I presented at were the Wildlife Migration in the West Forum put on by the Pew Trust and the National Wildlife Federation. I also presented at the Ecological Society for America. I, along with Ashley, Sarah Hoagland, Elvita, and Gloria Tom, presented at the National Wildlife Federation Women in Conservation Leadership Summit, which was a huge virtual conference. There were about 360 participants in our session. And then I presented on a webinar series for University of Georgia and Southern Regional Extension Forestry on just basically tribal lands and their management. And that was also a large forum of about 215 people. Continuing kind of that trend in 2020, so far I presented to about 900 participants virtually. I presented at the NWF annual conference, also presented along with Gloria Tom at the North American Wildlife and Natural Resource Conference. I was a keynote presenter for NWF's Eco Career Conference, and I've done several presentations on Recovering America's Wildlife Act, and also several education presentations. So in the news, we also had some media. I wrote an article for the Wildlife Society's Wildlife Professional April-May 2021 edition. Also was interviewed for Pew Charitable Trust RAWA article, and the RAWA press releases, Alvita's quote was used in Dingell's release for Recovering America's Wildlife Act in July, and that was pretty exciting. And then a couple other magazine interviews lately that I've been interviewed for. Also trainings. One of the things that I tell people, we were kind of in this like hunker down situation at the first part of the pandemic, and then quickly realized about July that we were going to have to figure out how to function in a virtual world. And the conservation law enforcement officers were kind of our guinea pigs, I guess, to see what that would be like. And I was really excited and really happy that we had Robert on to help promote those and help find opportunities for our CLEOs to still get their 40 hours of training. And so actually in 2020 for our CLEOs, we had 424 participants for our virtual trainings. Now, the thing that's really significant about that was in 2019, we trained 200 CLEOs. So we were able to really double our outreach for that. So that's really something that we will probably keep and integrate into our programming as we move forward. We also offered understanding the NEPA implementing regulations training in December of 2020, and that was a limited space class. I think we had 20 participants, and that filled up in about 2 days. And then most recently, we partnered with Global Wildlife Resources, to offer a limited wildlife chemical mobilization training online. And that was also a limited training for 20 participants, and we filled that up in about 36 hours. So that was exciting. That was a really great training, and hopefully we'll be able to offer that again, because we are listening to membership and understanding that what they really want to see from us is more these types of trainings to help build their capacity. For outreach and engagement, in July of 2020, we hosted a virtual roundtable to talk about what the pandemic impacts were looking like for tribal fish and wildlife programs, and then prepared a report for that went out to our membership. It was also on our website, and that was actually the topic of the Wildlife Society's article that I wrote, and we had about 40 people participate in that. In October of 2020, we partnered with ASU to offer a webinar on the Herrera versus Wyoming case, and that was for about 150 people. And then in January 2021, we did a Recovering America's Wildlife Act webinar for 70 people. June, we partnered with NWF and did a wildlife corridors connectivity discussion. And we had 53 people at that, which I was really excited about because we had a lot of tribes that we haven't engaged with before. So that was exciting. And then most recently, we partnered with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to have a discussion on America's Recovery Plan Section 6003, which is funding for wildlife zoonotic diseases, and then what the tribal needs are for that. So we had about 30 people attend that. Continuing on, we worked really hard to develop a spreadsheet of contacts for every tribal natural resource, fish and wildlife point of contact. So for example, when we were working on the wildlife corridors outreach, Sean Cross and I actually took the list of California tribes, and he started at the top and I started at the bottom, and we just started calling, Google searching, Facebook, whatever we could to try to get as many contacts as we could. And I think we ended up with about 80 emails, which I felt pretty good about, thinking that that's probably pretty representative of the programs, the tribal fish and wildlife programs in California. Also, the Fish and Wildlife biologists have been doing monthly webinars, and I'll let Sean and Corey talk about that more. Social media, learning to do a lot of selfies and try to promote our message and our organization to kind of a broader audience. So with Ashley's help and Alvita, we have a Facebook page, we have an Instagram page, we have Twitter, and we also have a YouTube channel. One of the great things that we did during the pandemic was we contracted someone to do a redesign of our website, and I think it looks a lot better. We've had a lot of comments. I even had, what really made my day is I had a biologist text me asking me for something and then say, oh, never mind, I found it on your website. That like made my day that it was useful. So we continue to kind of learn that. And once Karen retired, that was kind of a big gap because she's been doing the website upstate. So we're looking to fill that position, hoping we can get somebody that can really be able to fill that role. And then we've been working with Sarah Hoagland and Steve Albertson through a project with the Johns Hopkins University Press to develop a textbook that should be released in 2023, but it's a textbook on tribal wildlife management. And I'm really excited about that project, and I think it's long overdue, and hopefully it will be just kind of a catalyst for future projects like that. And then of course from the Eagle's Nest, which is our quarterly newsletter, and we just changed formats when we redesigned our website. So hopefully everyone got that. If not, you can go to the website and sign up to get on the listing. We've also been increasing our advocacy for tribes. So I was asked to speak at the USDA's APHIS Chronic Wasting Disease stakeholder meeting. And from that, listening to other tribes having similar concerns and being able to voice those concerns at that forum, we worked with a group of tribes and sent written comments to Heather Dawn Thompson, who is the Office of Tribal Relations for USDA, regarding chronic wasting funding and then access issues, specifically having to use Easy Fed system instead of grants.gov and just the barriers that puts up for tribes. We also listened based on a lot of feedback and input from tribes around the nation. We sent a letter to Martha Williams, who's the Principal Deputy Director for U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, just outlining some of the concerns that around tribal fish and wildlife. And that's been really great because she has taken time to meet with myself and the Board of Directors executive staff, our executive board, just to listen to our concerns and try to figure out how we can better serve tribal fish and wildlife managers. And we've been meeting, we also met with some green groups and congressional staff specifically around recovering and tribal concerns for fish and wildlife. We met with the Natural Resource Defense Council. We met with Defenders of Wildlife. We met with Centers of Biological Diversity and the Sierra Club. And after we met with them, NRDC, CBD, and Sierra Club all issued letters of support for recovering. So that was pretty exciting for us. In 2020, you know, I told you I didn't say no to anybody, but also kind of saw that I was getting pulled in a lot of different directions. So worked through trying to develop some national initiatives to help with our programming and really keep us focused. So these were the initiatives that the board approved, and they are 30 by 30, Recovering America's Wildlife Act, Tribal Wildlife Corridors Act, Tribal Engagement Involvement, State Wildlife Action Plans, Climate Change, and then Hydropower Reform Coalition. And I'll give a little update on each of those. So for the 30 by 30 initiative, hopefully you are all somewhat aware of that and have looked at the Conserving and Restoring America the Beautiful plan. If not, that's available, the link's available on our website, but it kind of outlines how that 30 by 30 and what 30 by 30 is an initiative to conserve 30% of lands, United States lands and oceans by 2030. So in September of 2020, I was asked to join a tribal leaders organization group that now Secretary Holland had formed to talk about how tribes were going to be involved in 30 by 30 and what that's going to look like. So I've really kind of just taken on more of a listening role because it is mainly tribal leaders, and I want to give them, you know, the space, and I'm just kind of listening and helping to get the word out. But there's a tribal leader statement on 30 by 30, and that's also available on our website if you have time to read that. But it really kind of just guides making sure that tribal sovereignty is protected and looking at engagement and making sure that tribes have an equal voice when 30 by 30 planning starts. Was also invited and began attending NRDC's 30 by 30 co-management meetings. The biggest thing I've been working on, that we've been working on, is Recovering America's Wildlife Act. And I think in May of 2019, when I first came on, that was really what I heard from the membership, is that this should be a priority for the society. And it was at that time also that the society passed a resolution of support and also a resolution to join the alliance around recovering. So, you know, we've been really working to build the Recovering Tribal Coalition. Most recently, we helped with a letter and getting the word out. We sent a letter to Secretary Holland regarding tribal support of RAWA. 52 tribes had signed that letter. We continue to send information about recovering to tribes and then also put the updates on our website. We are actively participating in the RAWA Alliance, and just kind of where that's at. The House version is HR 2773, and as of yesterday, it has 101 co-sponsors, which isn't quite as many as it did last year. Last year had strong bipartisan support. It ended 116th Congress with 185 co-sponsors. But more exciting for us is we finally see a Senate version, which we haven't seen before, and that's Senate Bill 2372, introduced by Senator Heinrich and Senator Blunt. And we're just continuing to tell the story and why this funding is so important for tribes and how it just impacts tribes differently than it does states. So we're really hopeful that we're going to see these to the finish line. And for those of you that don't know what Recovering America's Wildlife Act is, it's a bill that will help support tribes and states with fish and wildlife restoration and conservation. For states, it's $1.3 billion annually. For tribes, it's $97.5 million, which is huge for us. We haven't ever had, dedicated annual sustainable funding. So we're really hopeful that this will go through. Another one of our initiatives is tribal wildlife corridors and connectivity. That really impacts the Western states heavily because of just some of the landscape and the things that are going on right now. But one of the things we did prior to the wildlife connectivity discussion that we co-hosted with NWF was reach out to all the tribes in the 11 Western states, and that was 233 tribes. So when I tell you we had 53, I was pretty excited with that because we sent out probably 200 emails, invitations. And so getting 50 tribes to the table, a table that, we've been meeting around these wildlife corridor issue for a while, but it's kind of been the same group of people. So I was really excited to see new faces there and just excited to hear of all the work that's going on in Indian country already surrounding this. We've also seen an increase in interest for partnerships. Of course, we have NWF as one of our partners, but Pew Charitable Trust is also a partner with us. NRDC, Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership has reached out wanting to partner on several issues because we share kind of a lot of the same initiatives. And then U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So one of the things when I'm talking about the Western states is surrounding Secretary Order 3362, which for those, there's been some of you tribes in the Southwest have been successful in securing funding through that. But the problem with it in its current version is that it does not include tribes. And again, that is huge since there are 233 tribes in that area. So we're looking at maybe possibly working on revisions with Fish and Wildlife Service, or just kind of getting that message out that the current version excludes tribes. And then we provided input for Congressman Gallego on justification for $50 million for the Tribal Wildlife Corridors Act. Last Congress, Senator Udall introduced the Tribal Wildlife Corridors Act as a standalone. I believe it had $5 million allocated towards it. There is an overall Wildlife Corridors Act that doesn't seem to have quite as much support as the standalone tribal, but we worked with NWF to provide justification on why $50 million was needed versus $5 million. And we're hopeful that that's going to, that we're going to see this Tribal Wildlife Corridors Act introduced soon in the Senate. And then again, just providing the updates to the website on anything that we're working on. One of the things that kind of came out, and I have it at the bottom here, but in 2020, I was asked to present at the National Tribal and Indigenous Climate Conference. And the topic they asked me to present on was tribal engagement in state wildlife action plans. Quite honestly, I hadn't heard of any tribes that had been really engaged in the state's wildlife action plan. So I sent out an email asking tribes to tell me how they'd been engaged and if they hadn't been. And most of them, kind of said they hadn't been engaged, or they hadn't been contacted, or that they had, but they didn't feel like their input was really incorporated or taken seriously. And then there are some tribes that work hand in hand with the states, and their input is in their state wildlife action plan. But part of the state wildlife action plans, I believe it's guidance number 7, is that they are supposed to reach out to tribes and incorporate that input into their state wildlife action plans. So based on that, I thought that there was a need to kind of raise awareness of why tribes should be engaged. And I see it as a potential for not only partnership, but looking down the road for, in hopes of recovering being funded. I think, you know, tribes will want to do their own wildlife action plans or something similar to them if they don't have one already. And I think this is an opportunity to build that partnership if the tribe wants to provide, you know, technical assistance or work with the state on the information they already have. So one of our interns did a document review on current tribal engagement and swaps. And so we're looking at that to kind of bring together a report. And then we're also working with AFWA, the state's state wildlife or state fish and wildlife organization, to incorporate into what they're working on right now, which is voluntary recommendations regarding climate. I'm hoping that this will also put something in about tribal engagement as well. So that's one of the processes that we're working on with state wildlife action plans. Climate change, of course, this is a huge topic. We're fortunate to have good relationships with the climate adaptation science centers and their tribal liaisons. Of course, climate overlaps with a lot of our other initiatives, probably all of them. We're working with James Rattling Leaf out of the North Central Cask to do climate data workshop with the national meeting, and hopefully we'll be able to get that pulled off. We're also going to apply for 3 tribal liaison positions through the BIA Tribal Resilience Program. Right now, the RFP is for positions in Alaska, Pacific region, and Southwest region. So I'm working on that grant application. Hydropower reform, they have several working groups. I joined the working group 3 and 5 in the Uncommon Dialogue, and 3 and 5 are to increase basin scale decision-making and access to river-related data, and then advance effective river registration through improved offsite mitigation strategies. I've also met with Penobscot Nation regarding this initiative, because they're one of the kind of the driving forces behind some of the issues or some of the involvement of tribes with this. But honestly, it's seeming to be more in energy and industry driven. So I'm not sure that this is kind of the avenue that we should be taking for this, but still just kind of feeling it out. We are going to have a panel on hydropower impacts at our 2021 National Annual Conference, just because so many tribes are impacted by hydropower and especially their fish and wildlife resources. Now, Heidi's probably scratching her head because she says I use acronyms too much, but honestly, I didn't want to spell all these out, so I'm just going to tell you what they are. These are some of the partnerships that we've developed, or that we've re-energized since 2019. So for non-governmental organizations, we have the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership, NWF, National Wildlife Federation, NRDC is Natural Resource Defense Council, the Pew Charitable Trust, Sierra Club, Centers for Biological Diversity, and World Wildlife Fund. These are some of our NGO partnerships we're working on. Federal partners, of course, Bureau of Indian Affairs, Fish Wildlife Service, USGS, APHIS, Environmental Protection Agency, Forest Service, and Bureau of Land Management are some of our federal partners. And then we continue our longstanding partnership with Alabama Fire College to provide training for CLEOs through hazardous waste and other safeties. Challenges. COVID-19 has been obviously the biggest challenge for everyone, not just professionally, but also personally. Very fortunate to have been vaccinated early. Thankful that the tribe and IHS rolled that out quickly, and hopefully that helps. Other challenges are membership. The society hadn't been collecting membership dues for quite a while, so people are confused as to what their membership status is, or they're not used to paying a fee anymore. So that's been challenging, kind of doing the re-education. We tried to do a big push in 2020, but of course, a lot of tribes just weren't working or weren't operational the same way that they are. So I was pleased with what we got, just considering the situation we were in. And like I said, Heidi's done a phenomenal job of organizing that and reaching out, and I'm sure she'll give a better update than I do, but I know as of March, we had 12 new tribes, which I thought was really, really positive, because, you know, we're an organization since 1983. So being able to gain new membership is encouraging. The other challenges we have for membership is you know, kind of our age diversity within our membership. We need to really engage our younger membership and younger professionals, and so that we can sustain our society and our organization, and also just bring in kind of some fresh ideas. So membership is one of the things that we've really been focused on. In 2020, December 2020, the board approved new definitions. We've updated bylaws. So we now have 3 definitions. The first is support member tribe, which is tribes that we already have resolutions of support. And then a member tribe is one that has a resolution plus pays the $250 annual. And then of course we still have our individual membership at $50. So that's one of the challenges. Also receiving our BIA funds, even though our funding has gone up, we haven't had it transferred timely, but you know, we're working on that. Also, Karen retiring, 28 years to be with an organization, and you know, she really did hold the organization together for a while there kind of on her own, and just the wealth of knowledge and networking that she had, we're really missing that. But we're happy for her to be retired, and hope that she's able to enjoy her retirement and spend more time with her family. Of course, we're saddened to hear loss of her father, because I know that was one of the really big things she wanted to do, was go home and be with her family. So we wish her the best, and hopefully we'll see her again at future NAFWS stuff. Also, staff capacity, as we increase our membership, as we increase our visibility, we're just getting asked to be parts of a lot of things, and a lot of them are super important. And we really need to be able to have representation at a lot of different things. So just building our staff capacity, and making sure that staff aren't doing other duties as assigned more than their actual job description duties. And then event planning, for me personally, that's probably my most challenging thing, because there are just so many things, especially now, that are just out of control. But we're doing the best we can, and we're just kind of learning to roll with it, and doing virtual events, and hoping for the best with in-person events. The other thing is our survey. So one of the things that we really noticed last year, when there was an effort by the Alliance to push recovery into one of the infrastructure bills, and the Alliance was asking for economic impact data, and of course states were really readily, they had the information, it's going to provide this many jobs, it's going to put this much money into the economy, and we weren't able to provide that on a national level. So what we're doing is we're doing a tribal fish and wildlife survey, really high level, anonymous. We just kind of want to be able to really tell the story of what tribal fish and wildlife management looks like, and tell your story better, of just letting people know all the great things that you're doing with such limited funding and capacity. And so hopefully you got that survey, and hopefully you filled it out. If you haven't, please fill it out, because we really do need that information to help better serve our membership and also advocate for tribes. The last challenge is just kind of identity, making sure that the society maintains its own identity and isn't kind of swallowed up by some of the bigger organizations and partners that we work for. And I think we do a pretty good job of that, and making sure that people know who we are, and also making sure that organizations don't think that by working with NAFWS that means that they can say they're working with 227 tribes. And that's a message that we've been making sure that we're consistent with. Like, you need to reach out to tribes individually and get to know them. So those are some challenges. This is a picture from Karen's retirement supper. You probably recognize Sally and Rick. It's great to have them there as well. And then I don't want to just end on doom and gloom, so I wanted to end with some positives for the rest of our year. We are anticipating an increase in our staff, and some funding and partnerships. Also hoping to have an increase in membership just by having events. And I'm looking forward to the national annual conference. I'm really praying that things kind of settle down so that people are able to travel and we're able to have a great in-person conference. The Tribal Wildlife Fish and Wildlife Survey is a positive. Already we have 40 responses, and the data that I'm getting from that, it's already helping to frame the story that we'll continue to tell. And then cross your fingers that the pandemic ends. And I will tell you, probably one of the most positive things that I've experienced within the last 2 years is our Native youth. So these are some pictures on the left from our summer youth practicum. And let me tell you, these kids were phenomenal. I was blown away. And I think everywhere we went and the people that were presenting, they were blown away by the kids. Ashley had them all introduce themselves, and there were 9 kids there, and they all spoke their language enough to introduce themselves. And it was just, I mean, it just made me so inspired and just revved me up for what our future holds. And so I'm really excited about our Native youth and what they will bring to the table, and just seeing how they can speak and articulate their thoughts and their passion is just really inspiring. So I'm super excited about that. And then these are just some pictures from just my little travels over the last 2 years. And with that, that's into my presentation. I would be happy to answer any questions. Oh, somebody's got their hand up. Darren.
Hey, Julie, I was just curious, have you heard back from APHIS on how many tribes applied for the chronic wasting disease grants? I know there were some tribes that had difficulties in setting up the accounts and whatnot for that funding. So I was just curious if any other tribes out there had issues with that funding.
I haven't heard how many applied this year, but that was the overwhelming concern that tribes were bringing to us. And that's really what we tried to articulate in that letter to with our comments, you know, was just that easy fed system. I honestly, we were going to apply for the society as a society, and I guess I overestimated my abilities because I applied through grants.gov before, and when I got ready to go through easy fed, it was so cumbersome. And one tribal member, or I guess it was Salish Kootenai, they were going to apply, and she said she watched like hours of tutorials on how to use easy fed, and then finally got ready to apply, and she just wasn't able to get through it. And I think you have to have like 2 people set up in it. So it would be like you would apply and then it had to go through another person within your tribe. It's just really not user friendly. And we've expressed that several times. And I do think it will impact the number of tribes that apply. I think it's a barrier. And also, you know, I think the money that they put up is too low. I think it's 300,000 total. So that's limiting as well. So we'll continue to push for increase in funding, and also for them to use grants.gov. I'm unsure why I guess I don't really know why they're using easy fed, but yeah.
All right, we have another question from Butch. Butch, you want to unmute yourself?
Yes, thank you, Alvita. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
The question I have is, you know, this issue of lack of timeliness in getting the funding from the Bureau of Indian Affairs. I mean, we've been talking about this now for 20 years. And, you know, I'm just hoping that with the new Secretary of Interior, the new Assistant Secretary of Indian Affairs, perhaps you could, and the board president or chairman could go in and speak with them, not necessarily complaining, but just informing them that, look, you know, this funding is critical to our organization. You know, your BIA rep has been trying to deal with this. I know that Diane Mankliger has worked on this. She has to be extremely frustrated. But again, it needs to get fixed because it's been going on too long.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and it seems to bottleneck in one spot up there. But yeah, I know Diane's working on it, and I know the other BIA Fish Wildlife Recreation people they've been good. So I agree. Hopefully this year will be better. That's all I can say. And if it's not, then yeah, we'll have to probably raise it up higher.
All right, thanks, Julie. Anybody else have any other questions for Julie at this time? All right, thank you, Julie. As you guys can hear on Julie's report, you know, our society has been really busy over the last couple of years since Julie's come on. She came on in 2019. Yeah, when we had our conference down in Chandler. So again, she's been off and running and we've been doing a lot of good things. I'm really happy, you know, that our funding has increased. We're going to be, again, even in 2021, we'll be expanding our staff. We have a few more funding opportunities that are going to allow us to do that. Right now, we're hoping to hire 4 more people in the very near future. So again, I think what we've seen in our discussions, even like with the Recovering America's Wildlife Act, talking to a lot of these non-governmental organizations, we talk to them and some of them have staffs of, oh my God, there's hundreds and thousands of staff people, and we talk to them and we have a staff of just a few people, and I think we're doing a dang good job with what we have. So I really appreciate our staff at the national office and, you know, the people that are working remotely. So again, thank you, Julie.